Hi, everyone, welcome to today's Level Up Together, where we come together and share our insights and experiences, examples, etc. And we are reading The Monsters and Magical Stick. And let's see. All right. So, with that said, being here, you're giving me the permission to be recorded. Hey, Torian, welcome. And the recordings will be shared on YouTube via on level one, etc. groups via YouTube. And I'm a level four practitioner and as your host and co-reader and etc. So all our insights and experiences help each other grow and learn together. So let's get started. I am, let's see. Page number, I believe we stopped at page number 98. Does that make sense to any other? Randall,
Uh,
do you remember?
it, is it, well, I have the last header highlighted system interruptions.
Okay,
Does that
ooh,
link with what you have?
that makes sense. Yes, that makes sense. All right, good. We finished that systems interrupted, I believe. No, if not, we can just read that. And I'm not sure which one we stopped at. I should have put a pencil on it. Who would like
Yeah,
to read today?
I think we finished up the system interruptions and then we were
Okay,
in the
cool. All right, mastering the out of conscious, which will be a good one because we read about the out of conscious and we read the conscious and the unconscious. So I would like to read Mastering Out of Conscious, page 95 in my book. So it should be around there. Hey, Torian,
Alrighty.
thanks.
The next area for you to begin mastering is that out of conscious, unconscious system, out of conscious system. That is of particular importance in the area of the individual's dysfunction. For example, a patient's consciousness output is kinesthetic while the input system is visual, and you do not observe any evidence of his or her using the auditory to check out reality. This is the indication. The indication here is that the auditory is out of the conscious system. Another example using the same systems as above, you ask the individual what she's seeing in her mind, and reply is, I'm not seeing any pictures or words to that effect equal out of conscious visual. Another pattern might be patient looks up to the left and then down, and then the conscious output system is very visual. This could indicate the kinesthetic is out of the conscious system, or if you were to ask what she or he is saying to herself, and the response is, I'm not saying anything or I don't hear anything equals out of conscious auditory.
All right, definitely. So that was interesting. Torian, did you get anything from that?
I'm gonna be real. They just use the word out of conscious way too many times for me as the reader to be able to feel. I'm like, I feel like I just read one word 14,000 times. But it does make sense if someone's clearly not like visual, then they're out of conscious visual.
Right, they're not in touch with their visual.
Mhm.
Hmm. And I also like how they, just from the eye movement, he figured out that which one is there out of conscious. Because they let's see, where was it? He asked the individual what he or she is seeing in her mind, and the reply is, I'm not seeing any pictures or words. Another pattern might be patient looks up left. That means they're accessing their visual, and then down left um, is, I guess, that is auditory. In this book, they don't say like left and right, but when they are talking about auditory, they're using down left. So I'm not sure what exactly are they trying to say here. What do you think, Susan?
They don't make clear, or at least I'm not clear on, are they saying my left, right? I mean, I've got a little image where if you
Yeah.
were to look down to your right, it would be my left.
I think it's
Yes.
their
I
left.
think it's
Yeah.
up left. I think it's from
So up left, which would be on my right side. If you're looking up left, it's visual, remember,
Remembered.
typically.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the unconscious,
I think it's theirs. Yes.
right. So I'm wondering, my question around this is Robert says he doesn't see pictures very clearly. He has eyes, so we know that he does make images, but would that be something that's out of his consciousness that this is speaking about? He may be accessing pictures, but he doesn't see the pictures. Is that kind of what this is
Yeah.
saying?
So that would be out of conscious. Yes. Definitely. Yeah. Yeah. He said if you guys remember, he said he remembers when he decided to stop seeing pictures because he said he didn't want to see pictures anymore. And he says it's better now. But yeah, he's not like the visual is not as strong for him. Yeah, so I think when they're saying he's looking up left, it's their left, because um yeah, yeah, right. So when they say the patient is looking up left and down to the left, that is auditory recalled and visual recalled. So they're accessing their pictures and words for the input system. And the conscious output system is visual. This could indicate that the kinesthetic is out of conscious system. Yeah, it's interesting. Hey, Sherry, we are on page 96 in the Monsters and Magical Sticks. Randall just posted those pictures, those images of the eye movement charts again. Thank you, Randall.
I'm sorry, did you say 96?
Yes, it should be around there for you. I don't know
Yeah,
if all books are.
mine is different. What is the title that we're on?
We
Mine
just
says,
finished Mastering Out of Conscious.
is that,
Mine's 98, if it
98.
helps, Sherry.
yeah, I think I'm even more off than I've got instant pattern on the bottom of it.
See,
Eight.
instant pattern.
I think I'm a few, I don't know why my
I
book is,
think you're in a different chapter.
are you in chapter 9?
See, we
No,
are
we're in chapter 8.
Oh, see, that's
Chapter
way,
8.
okay.
Okay, so go back. Out of conscious, utilizing.
There's
we
utilizing out of
just,
conscious system.
yeah, we just finished mastering out of conscious. So now we'll read out of conscious to conscious.
Conscious to conscious, okay.
All right, perfect.
That's
All right, who
actually
would like
page
to read?
89 for
Okay,
me.
oh, wow. Yes.
Yeah.
All right, who would like to read out of conscious to conscious?
I can read.
Okay, thank you, Randall.
Okay. Out of conscious to conscious. Once you have determined which is the out of conscious system, you have two primary choices to bring that system into conscious awareness so that the individual stops giving him or herself hypnotic suggestions for which there is then amnesia, or to use that system as the one in which you structure your hypnotic and therapeutic work. Since that system is out of conscious, almost any hypnotic work you do in that system will, in most cases, lead to amnesia for that work. When that happens, it makes it very difficult for your patient to block or sabotage the therapeutic process. If you choose the first method, bringing the system into awareness, you have several choices. The easiest, and in most cases, the fastest, is to do system overlays. That simply means starting in the individual's conscious system, moving to the unconscious system, and then to the out of conscious system, and repeating the procedure until you get the desired result. Let us say that the patient's auditory is out of conscious system, while visual is the conscious output, and to make it easy, kinesthetic is the unconscious system. By the way, what I have just described is an unusual combination. I picked it to make my job of clarification easier for me. Let's also say that your patient has informed you that he or she really likes to go to the beach. You might then ask him or her to close their eyes and to picture the beach on a beautiful day. As your patient responds, you would then spend a few minutes describing the visual experiences common to the beach. As you observe the signs of relaxation or calmness or concentration or even trance, you would then begin to introduce kinesthetic experiences. Example, watching the beautiful blue sky and the clouds and feeling the warmth from that bright sun. After a few minutes of visual kinesthetic, you would then begin to introduce the auditory experience. And the sound of the waves crashing in helps you relax even more. As you hear the sounds of the waves, you watch the waves building and then falling. You should feel a deep calmness. You can see children playing and hearing the sound of their laughter and remember a feeling of pleasure from your past, etc., etc. With system overlaying, one of two things will happen. In many cases, both will happen. Your patient will move into that state of mind that we might call hypnosis, and perhaps more slowly and with more experiences of system overlay, the out of conscious system block will crumble. I've had dozens of individuals report that as they experienced what I was describing, they began to hear the sounds clearly or feel all the feelings or get clear pictures. What's even more important is that in subsequent sessions, they report and give evidence of cleaning up that block in their real world. Try it. You'll like it.
Fun. Any insights on that, Randall?
I think it was pretty straightforward. Other for me, it's a little bit confusing at this point is still how to identify somebody's unconscious, out of conscious thing, for lack of a better word, area. It just makes me feel like I want to go back and reread something that I may have missed
Yeah,
while doing this. Um,
definitely.
but it does sort of make sense that once if you and the interpretation I also get is that the blocked system is it sounds like it's important to wake up and open up to give this person more tools and more ability to pay attention. Is that right? Is there a priority to this? Is this the most important thing? Um, a most important thing to get working on that person because the out of conscious one is the one that sticks things stronger, makes things
I
stick
think,
stronger.
I think so. Like when there's an out of conscious system, uh, if like in our context with eutaptics, as we're working with the memories and there's the different modalities, right? And if they're not able to access, say, for example, auditory, we clean up the visual, we clean up the kinesthetic, but they can't hear the words. So I believe like, those words are still in there, but they haven't been cleaned up. So, so we can, as soon as you can see, perhaps, your friend smiling and it feels so good, you will be able to hear those friendly words they're saying, so like we're just taking them through the different modalities into the out of conscious modality. And yeah, or if like we're talking about the bad memory, as soon as you can see what happened, feel those feelings in your body, you could hear the sound of what happened. So let them experience that so we can fully clean up whatever's hidden. So yeah, I feel like it's important certainly, and to be able to readily um, access or to be able to figure out which one is the out of conscious system. I think it's a good thing to know if they have an out of conscious system so that we can clean up.
Is that simply by asking questions or perhaps putting out to them, can you see this or can you hear this or how does that feel to you? And they say, oh, I can't do that. And that's how you identify what they
Yeah.
can't do?
That's one of the ways, like according to the book, that's one of the ways you just ask questions. Or also you watch their eye movements.
Right.
So yeah,
Oh,
where the
yes, of
eye is
course.
moving. Yes. The eye movement and if they're seeing it, they're hearing it, but they're not feeling, they're not going into the feelings. So there has to be some feelings because we all have all systems, the VAK, those are the big ones. We all have all of them, but they're not accessing it. So that one is out of conscious.
I wonder if that changes from one trauma to the next.
I think it does. It probably does because we are so multifaceted. And like a good memory, we might be able to access all the systems, but the bad memories, we block out one system.
Self-defense mechanism.
Mm.
Interesting.
Yeah, very interesting, huh? Okay. Any other? Yeah, Sherry, what do you get out of
Um,
it?
well, I have a question, and it made me think, with the eye movement. Sometimes in a session, we will ask the person to move their eyes back and forth. So, is there any connection there in what we're learning here?
That's different. That's like a technique to like kind of link the right hemisphere, left hemisphere, and to be able to get them out of what they're seeing in their mind, perhaps, and to just access both parts of the brain.
Okay, so that's the
It's like
purpose.
an eye movement technique
Okay,
to, yeah, it's like
not
EMDR. Hmm.
not any connection here with what we're talking about. Okay,
Mm-mm.
okay,
Yeah,
just one.
this is to be able to access a memory, and if
Okay,
they're talking about something where their eyes are moving, so then we can see if they're using or they're accessing it visually or auditorily, if they're hearing things or they're feeling.
okay.
Yeah.
But you can
Mhm.
also tell by how they're describing, right?
Yes, and that's the output system. That's the conscious
Ah,
output.
okay.
Yeah, and then the input system is how they're seeing it inside, or they're hearing it inside, or they're feeling inside.
Okay.
Sometimes they could both be same, and sometimes they're different.
Mhm.
Mhm. Yeah. All right. So, if we're ready to get on the next one, who would like to read the next section? Unblocking via common experience.
I will.
Okay.
Another approach to the unblocking of an out of conscious system is to begin simply talking about common pleasant experiences in that system. That is, out of conscious kinesthetic. Talk about what it feels like to take a warm shower after a hard day's work, the feelings of a freshly laundered sheet when you get into bed, the warm afterglow of making love. Use your imagination. Almost anything will do. If, as you are describing common feelings, you begin to more and more describe pleasant feelings of childhood, you will stand a good chance of producing hypnosis and a regression to their childhood. This will happen because your communication will cause them to have to go into their out of conscious system in order to find that experience. Once the individual goes into that system, they must leave their conscious output system somewhere else, in short, an altered state of consciousness. Okay. So they make it sound like it's pretty easy to, once you start describing feelings, to get into the feelings of childhood. I guess because you're relating um, as you go into that.
This is just slowly opening up that out of conscious system a little bit, perhaps, and they're like just slowly accessing more and more of the pleasant feelings, right? Of the pleasant. So when there's pleasant experience, there's less of a resistance to go to the out of conscious system.
Right.
And
Okay.
as they are able to access that system, then they can slowly get into that out of conscious system in the bad memories of childhood. Because
Which
I
is
guess
what
it's
we're.
just about opening up a door, right? Yeah, wherever that trauma or hurt is.
Mhm.
Yeah, very cool. Hmm. Yeah. So we can head on to the next one. Susan, would you like to read? Utilizing self-conscious system?
Yes. If you make the choice of leaving the out of conscious system just that, out of conscious, your approach would be very different from what you have read thus far. You could use that system to mind read and provoke internal searches. Let us assume that the individual has an out of conscious auditory system. You could say something like, and soon you will remember just who that person was that said those things that are still causing you to feel that way. Or, and I know that as you become aware of what that voice is saying, you will know how to solve that problem. Such an approach will stir up a lot of internal activity and generally will cause the individual to soon discover what that auditory system is doing. Another use of the out of conscious system is to use it to produce amnesia for beneficial suggestions. Example, a patient whose conscious output system was visual, while her out of conscious system was kinesthetic, she told me that everything looks hopeless. When I see the way people look at me, I really get upset. I asked her to tell me what the sound of hopelessness was. Her face went blank. She looked confused, and after a moment, her eyes went down left, then up left. At that point, I said, okay, instead, you can begin to feel stronger and feel more calm. She looked at me and said, what? I didn't hear what you said. Since my suggestion was made in her out of conscious system, while she was using her other systems to search, she had amnesia for my words. As this session progressed, she became very relaxed. As we finished, she said, I'm not sure what happened today, but I feel much more calm, and I think I may be strong enough to beat this. Interesting.
That's interesting.
I need to read this section more slowly and take notes. It's
Yes, I know. I
confusing.
hear you.
It's
Yes.
intentional amnesia. It's very interesting to be able to access that unconscious by getting her to search in her conscious input, output. I need to take notes.
I have a note here. The mind is searching with the input system. That's when you put in the command. Okay. So her conscious output was visual. So she said that everything looks hopeful, right? So that was visual. She's talking in visual. And he said that her out of conscious was kinesthetic. And when he talked about, you can begin to feel stronger and more calm. And she was confused about that. She couldn't, she got confused and she got amnesia because the suggestion was made in her out of conscious system. And then as she was done, she said she felt more calm. She felt strong. So she was back into she was able to access her out of conscious. Yeah, it's definitely the whole book. You want to, this section, this out of conscious system, you want to read again and again. Yeah, certainly. Yeah. Anybody else got something else out of it? Some more understanding? All right. So we can get on to the next one, the shock method. Who would like to read? If not, I can read the shock method. There is one more approach to the out of conscious system. I would like to give you the shock method. With this approach, you simply ignore the conscious and the unconscious system and go straight to the out of conscious system. For example, the conscious output system equals kinesthetic. So they're basically talking and feeling. Like I feel, right? Unconscious input system equals auditory, and out of conscious system equals visual. The patient is talking kinesthetically about how bad she feels. You respond. When you see what those feelings look like, I know you will be able to change the picture to one that looks much better. With this method, you have a good chance of producing amnesia for what you have said, causing an informal hypnotic state for a moment or much longer, and or producing an unconscious restructure without the patient being aware of how all this took place. Very interesting. So he just went directly into the out of conscious, and the patient doesn't even know what happened. So it's fun. Okay. All right. I can read the next one. Case 5, R. I would now like to tell you about R and how the use of systems made the difference between success and a great big zero. R was brought to my office by his wife, and I soon learned he had not really agreed to see me. He refused to fill out my intake form, and when he came into my office, he would not talk. He sat with his arms tightly crossed and gave every evidence of being very hostile. His wife informed me that R had not been his usual self for nearly a year, that she had taken him to a psychiatrist and he had refused to cooperate, and that he would not tell her what was bothering him. I asked him what he thought the trouble was, and his response was to merely shrug his shoulders. The only other information I had was that R stared to his left, which is our right, okay, with his eyes in a slightly upward mode. Since he wouldn't talk, I began to use metaphors with my emphasis on visual experiences. I talked about a little boy being afraid and angry. Each story was filled with visual information. After about 10 minutes, R began glancing at me and would occasionally nod his head, and he appeared to be starting to respond very slightly at this point. I began to tie in kinesthetic experiences to my stories. Example, and the little boy couldn't see any way out of the problem, which caused him to feel a very heavy feeling inside. R now began to stare freely at me, and his body posture slightly relaxed. However, even though he was not looking in my direction, it was clear to me that he was now in an altered state. His eyes had a faraway, distracted look, and his facial muscles had flattened out. Several minutes later, he looked right at me, blinked several times, and interrupted me to say, I get the picture. If I don't look for a way out of this, I will never see things differently. He then began to talk quite freely. He said that he had been very depressed about his children leaving home, and by the fact that he was getting on in his years, he was 62, without ever having seen himself successful. He also admitted that not only had he wanted to see me, but he had come in prepared. Not only hadn't he wanted to see me, but he had come in prepared to be very hostile. I discovered later that he believed that seeking help was a sign of his failure, and he did not want to face that. That's very interesting. So he just noticed his input system was visual, so that he was seeing something in his mind that was causing him that distress. So he just started talking in visual, and then he moved to kinesthetic because definitely like he was seeing something that was making him feel bad. So yeah, that was interesting. Anyone else? Yeah. All right. That was pretty easy and that made sense. Who would like to read the next one, the case 6 change? Hey, Torian.
Case 6 change. At this juncture, R was actually very friendly and talkative. His problem just poured out, almost always beginning with visual system and ending with it in his kinesthetic. Since he was using a ton of words, I made the following assumptions. Since he was using a ton of words, I used the following assumptions as to his systems. His output system was primary auditory, with visual being a strong second. His unconscious system was visual, very pronounced. And since he never moved his eyes to this kinesthetic or auditory, my best guess was that both his kinesthetic or auditory were out of conscious. He verified my assumptions when he told me I have a lot of trouble feeling close to people or showing any emotion, and my wife tells me that I don't listen to people very well. I spent several minutes discussing the process of unconscious learning and emphasizing visual experiences, and then I said, I would like you to see for yourself how the unconscious can work separately from the conscious. I want you to hold your hand in front of you on your face like this, and at this point, I show him with my hand palm towards my face. Good. Now, as you wash your hand just like that, your unconscious will show you something that you need to see. Perhaps that little boy at the time and place where he needs to be see himself as not good enough. Pause. That's right. And as the picture becomes more clear, that hand will begin to bring that picture closer to your face. While the sound of my voice makes you feel stronger, his hand begins slowly moving towards his face. Now, as you get the picture using the exact phrase he had used earlier, you may find the comfort of closing your eyes, blink several times, and then his eyes close. And I don't know just where you will see the hands coming to rest against your face. As my voice relaxes more and more. I know it will be strange to see the picture of a little boy who feels bad while you feel comfortable even more now. His hand reached his face in several minutes and appears to be very deep into that state. Now, as you continue to learn something important to you, you can continue to change the feelings into those of comfort. And I don't want that hand to move down something more quickly than you have learned something important. And that is no more quickly than you hear the voice inside telling the little boy that it will be okay. And it never was what he thought it was. It was close to 10 minutes before R's hands began moving down. And when he was on his lap, he opened his eyes and began to cry softly. Pretty good for a man who has trouble feeling or showing his feelings. And told me about two incidents that he had really gotten as a child. His eyes were now moving to the kinesthetic area when he was recalling the feelings of the incidents, and several times they went briefly into his auditory. He informed me that sometimes he heard my voice, but most of the time he didn't, and he could remember very little about what I said. This is but a very small example of what systems can do for you, and more importantly, for your patients and clients. I know that this trip through the land of systems has led you to see many new sites, as well as touch upon them on many interesting points. I hope the sounds were stimulating also. Even though this trip is ending and you have only started. As you practice, you will discover that I have only touched lightly on all the possibilities that you'll soon see. It is far beyond the scope of work to get into all the ramifications, the subtleties, and surprises. One of the surprises I hope that you will discover is all systems from anxiety to depression and anorexia to obesity will have a certain set of patterns of systems. I will go into more out on a limb and state the majority of people with each system will have the same patterns. Once you recognize the pattern and it's a loop, you need to help the individual break and form a choice of patterns. Now that you have shed some light, or now that you have shed some and maybe all of the excess baggage you began with, your hands are free to get a firm grasp on new things, and I hope you will find the rest of the book a journey forward and with comfort now.
Thank you.
Sorry, I haven't read out loud in like 5 years.
It's okay. No, you're doing great. Anything you would like to share on that, Toria?
I think it was interesting.
Yeah.
I don't know. I just think of my dad. That might I know he won't do it, but it would help him for just seeing all this stuff. 'Cause he's just not very in touch with his emotions.
Hmm.
But I don't know. I might show it to him, see if he shits on it right away.
Maybe just need to have a conversation in certain states and he'll warm up to that.
Anything with you tactics, he kind of gets like, I don't
No,
know how to
no,
say it, weird. It's because both me and my mom do it, so we both try to like teach him things all the time. So he's kind of resistant at this point.
I wasn't suggesting that. I was suggesting
Randall, you just froze.
Okay, I
uh
was.
over time he may, start to can dad? uh, or how does that feel to you?
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's a
And,
good
and
idea.
eventually he will wear through the invisible barriers and start to work in those different modalities, possibly.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, if you feel
Head
like
motion.
kinesthetic, definitely.
Yeah.
If you feel like kinesthetic is his out of conscious, that he doesn't can't access his feelings, or you can just like talk about happy memories, like just going to the beach, going to Mexico, talking about like seeing, start with the visual. Oh, Dad, do you remember seeing that? And then, and hearing the sounds, and then just going to the feelings, just feeling, noticing the feelings. And it's not
Oh,
about
amazing that
teaching.
sand felt between your toes, the warmth and
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Feeling the warmth, feeling the sand, just, and how good it felt. So just if you start talking in kinesthetic, that will shift him into his kinesthetic.
Okay.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. So definitely instead of like not teaching, but just doing the work on him without him knowing it, just helping him get into the feelings.
Yeah, you definitely try that.
Hmm. Yeah. And I know when people have also like physical sicknesses in the body, that's just stuck emotions that they haven't released. So there could be a lot of just working through emotions.
Your word to God's ears, dude. If that's 100% what it is, but
Yeah.
can't force someone to do
No, you
no.
can't.
I wish you
But you also may,
could.
gather meaning if there's been some physical stuff, he's got, liver issues or whatever, and then there's the two books that we've been using, or three books, I guess, the anatomy, spiritual anatomy, the other one by Leo,
Single.
somebody, yeah. And that might give you some insight without actually being invasive.
Unfortunately, it would just be the whole book at this point because there isn't one system that's not failing at this point. So it's
Mm.
kind of, I'm
Yeah.
leaving that up to the adults.
Yeah.
That's what I've learned through my whole journey of this is I am only
Yes.
26 and that's okay.
Yeah,
That's an
exactly.
adult though.
I
When
know. What I mean is just my entire like childhood. I felt like I had to take care of all the adults in my life. Now
right.
I'm trying to learn how to take care of Torian, and
Let
then
them
Yes.
the
take care of
adults in my
themselves.
life.
Yes.
I get that.
Absolutely. Definitely. All right. Any other insights on this chapter, anyone, or questions that we could discuss or anything? Well, we can move on to chapter 9, patterns. But this is a chapter definitely I would like to go back through and take notes because there's a lot of good stuff here.
Yeah.
I think this is the most important chapter of the book. Right. Patterns. Who would like to read? What's the next chapter?
Chapter
Next
2,
section. Thank you, Randall.
hypnosis and patterns. Picture, if you will, an old-time hypnotist putting a subject into a hypnotic state and then giving a powerful suggestion. For those of you who are wondering just what the powerful suggestion is, those that work are powerful. The rest are weak. That's good. I like that. The hypnotist suggests that at 4 in the afternoon, the subject's nose will itch and the subject will have to scratch it. If this suggestion were effective, the subject would respond as expected. If he were to repeat this response 3 or 4 days in a row, he might be surprised to discover that he had developed a pattern of scratching his nose at 4 p.m. each day. Even an individual without training in hypnosis would recognize that the pattern was the result of the hypnotic suggestion. Of course. Take a child and tell him over and over that he will never be as good as his father, nor his brother, and he will never amount to anything. Years later, every time he's about to get a promotion, he gets drunk, forgets to show up for work, and he amounts to nothing. We would call that a pattern resulting from hypnosis, or would we? Patterns are a necessary and important part of our behavior. Most patterns serve as useful functions and free our mind for new learning experiences. In reading this, you are relying on patterns learned many years ago, patterns in sitting, holding the book, seeing the words, understanding and learning. You drive down a street and a car runs a red light in front of you. Automatically, you jam on the brakes, tighten up, and prepare for the possibility of a crash. During those actions, there were literally hundreds of physiological, psychological, and emotional responses occurring in a patterned way, designed to help you, like the middle finger and how dare you. If you had to think out and analyze the situation, your responses, you no doubt would have had an accident. I certainly see that in the way my sister drives and is like, hey, how dare you? It's like there's ongoing commentary. And I know where she got that too.
She got programmed by
One of our parents.
Right.
Yeah, I got
How
that.
he drives, and I didn't, that's not how I drive, but my son drives that way. It's just this ongoing commentary of what somebody else did wrong. And it's like, yeah, okay. Anyways, patterns and experiment. We humans not only rely on patterns, but as I will point out shortly, we are capable of adopting patterns in a very rapid fashion. In addition, we are uncomfortable, sometimes even miserable, when our patterns are interfered with or changed. Think back now to a time when you've moved, changed jobs, or rearranged furniture. You may be able to remember those vague, uneasy feelings. You may even experience some of that now or in a short while. Try the following experiment. Pay attention to your sequence or patterns of dressing in the morning. You put your pants on before your shirt, right shoe before your left, blouse before your skirt, shave the right side of your face before the left, cheeks before the neck. Once you've discovered your patterns, make every effort to vary your patterns each day for several days. You may notice that you feel awkward and a little clumsy. Next, change the side of your bed you normally sleep on. Be prepared. You may have some difficulty falling asleep. On the other hand, you may not sleep well at all. If you sleep with someone, and I hope you do, if they agree to change sides with you, share your experience the next morning. Last but not least, if you eat a meal in a family setting, have everyone take a different seat from the pattern ones you usually take. Pay close attention to your internal responses and observe the behavior of those around you. It has been estimated that at least 60 to 70% of all our behaviors are pattern responses. Patterns can free us for more creative endeavors. Maladaptive and self-defeating behaviors are pattern responses as well. In my opinion, therapy succeeds by whatever method or construction. Whenever painful patterns are interrupted and more successful patterns are utilized in their place, there are biological patterns built into the system, but the ones that we wish to explore are learned. What can be learned can be relearned. We all know how to crawl, and we always will. However, we have also learned how to walk and to find that to be, in most cases, a better choice. We know when crawling would be our most effective choice and can decide when to rely on that pattern. People who rely on maladaptive patterns often appear to have no choice as to when or where to use another pattern. A maladaptive pattern behavior may be totally inappropriate under the circumstances, or it may have served a purpose in the past and now be archaic, or the painful result may be due to a lack of choices as to when to reply on the pattern.
Yeah, that was very interesting.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm very particular with where I sit in a restaurant. I hate facing a wall. I don't like that feeling. And so as a result, my adaptive pattern is when the person starts to lead us to the table, especially if I'm with a group of people, I like to be one of the first people there so that, and I can't always do that, right? But because sometimes that would be rude. But ultimately, I do like to be able to choose. And my family always says, okay, Dad, which seat do you want to sit in? And then we all move around to that.
Hmm.
And yeah, I figured I was
So interesting.
an assassin in a previous lifetime, and you got to have your back to the wall, so make sure you're safe. And who knows? Maybe
Right.
there's some truth to that. I don't know.
Maybe there's some truth to that. Yes. Yes. Very
We were with a
interesting.
large group of people at a hotel, and we did a dinner, and one of the women works in human resources, and so she decided that we should all not sit with our partners, but actually sit with somebody you don't really know very well. And yeah, it was a slightly uncomfortable experiment, and I didn't enjoy myself as much as I would have had I had my partner next to me.
Yeah,
Hmm.
that's very interesting. Thank you. That was a really, how it's like the brain, we just get so set in patterns, so set. Yeah. Anyone else has any patterns that they feel like I don't know, that we have formed? I'm trying to think, I don't know. But those
What's
are
the
really
first
good
thing you do when you
examples.
get up in the morning?
Oh, I didn't do it today because I've been having sleepovers with my nieces and my daughters last couple of days. But I have formed the pattern just as soon as I put my feet on the ground, put my hands up, and say it's going to be a great day today. So
Smart.
it's a good pattern to form because I used to wake up like really going into my negative thoughts, feeling bad about myself, feeling like it's going to be another day of, you know, but now that's a different pattern, changing that pattern changes everything. You just go on with your day and feeling good.
It's very kinesthetic too, right?
It's very kinesthetic. Yeah. It's just celebrating the new day.
Gets
I
you out of
have,
that negative thought loop, doesn't it?
yeah.
Yes, it does. Yeah, absolutely.
I may have said this
Yeah.
with this group before, I don't know, but they did this experiment where they had blind people who were blind from birth, so they'd never seen somebody win a champion or anything, and they did this race, and what they discovered was that even people who had never seen anybody else do this thing, when they won, they put their hands up in a V and went, "Yay!"
Hmm.
Interesting.
So interesting. Yeah. So that's a very very, I don't know, what would you call it, that innate thing to do. Yeah.
Yeah,
And
in a
people
similar
from
way,
yeah.
the first book of written on body language was written by Darwin. He observed these what we now refer to as involuntary expressions. Yeah, it can be eye dilation, it can be, eyebrow coming up, but ultimately there are very common amongst most human beings, very similar involuntary expressions. And the observation was that your body language reflects your inner emotional state. Um, and so I think his last name was Pease. He wrote The Definitive Guide to Body Reading, which is a fascinating book. And they went to a great deal of trouble to expand upon what Darwin had started. And so they got all these subjects and put them in a whole bunch of different places, filmed them, recorded them as they were stimulated. And what they found was that, and what we know is that not everyone has the same amount of muscles in their body, that some people can't make certain expressions because they're actually lacking physical muscles or they're attached in a slightly different place. So not everybody can lift their eyebrow like Spock. And so they tortured some of these people with electronic stimulation to try and force these things to actually work, to recreate those movements. The bottom line was that they discovered that body language is not a one-way feedback loop, that it doesn't just express how you feel. They discovered that as they were modeling these expressions and movements, that it also created those emotional states within them, even though that wasn't the starting point. So it's a two-way feedback loop. And in this story I tell to some of my clients is that, the advent of the iPhone and you looking down constantly and into this little device ultimately is very similar to the body language of depression.
Mm.
Rounded forward shoulders, forward head posture, just tight abdominals. And so, I think that's an influence as to how the mental wellness of society is impacted.
Yes, thank you.
Great
That's
point.
definitely so good point. Yes. Yeah. Definitely we need to change our postures. Hey, Sherry.
Yeah, I was thinking when we were reading this that even we have lots of positive patterns and a lot of negative patterns, and that it might be good to actually look at the negative ones and look at them as a pattern rather than a self-defeating expression, like a negative pattern that could be changed. And in the last year, I had started walking early every morning, and it was just I couldn't wait to get out. Well, the weather got bad, and I kind of got out of my pattern and my habit. And then the days just started developing, and then I wasn't going out. And it took a lot to get back. But it was kind of a learning experience because now I'm at the point where I'm turning a corner where, oh, it's not so bad getting out in the more early in the morning. I'm about to develop that positive pattern again. But it took a lot of awareness and concentration of flipping negative to positive. But it's just really comforting to know that you can actually develop any good habit just consciously doing it. And so things that aren't going right in my life, I'm gonna, after reading this today, I'm gonna start thinking, what is a negative pattern that I'm doing or saying to myself that's keeping me from moving into something more positive? So I just thought this was really good to look at.
Yeah. And I also see, like, when we are changing our memories, we are just basically changing a pattern. We're
Exactly.
it's not like it doesn't matter if mom said this or dad said that. It's like it's a pattern that we have inside of us that we are still living our life from. So now if we change that in the past, we are changing that pattern for us going forward in the future of how we are doing it to ourselves or how we are doing it to others from here on,
And Robert has
because
said, if you change a memory, you change a behavior.
yeah, yeah, definitely. Yeah, it's the E-Baba, that behavior, actions, attitudes, and beliefs, we're changing a memory, we're changing all those. So yeah, definitely. It's like as we're changing the memories, it's always good to look at all those aspects, and patterns and behaviors and actions. What actions are we going to take now? So we're changing that reference in the unconscious. And then from that, we have to be consciously conscious of what are we doing differently from here on.
Mhm.
Because
Yeah.
if we keep doing the same patterns, but we change the memory, it doesn't change anything. you know.
You go back to the old memory.
Then you just go back to it. You're just doing the same pattern. So then we consciously, okay, how am I gonna do it differently now? What new action am I gonna take? What new patterns, what new beliefs do I have?
I guess that's a way of screwing up a good memory, a new memory.
Hey,
Yeah, definitely. Thanks, Sherry. I like that. How do you screw up a new memory? Do the same patterns again.
Yeah.
well, and that's a chapter in the manual, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
How to
yeah,
screw up a good
exactly.
memory.
Yeah. Yeah,
So with that,
absolutely.
with screwing up that good memory, that pattern you're trying to put in, would that maybe mean there's still something from the past that needs to be eliminated, changed?
Possibly, yes. We could have changed the whole memory, but we might be in the habit of just sitting like this instead of like this, or catching in the future of we become in the pattern, in the habit of doing that. So next time somebody says something, we might react the same way. So you have to just be conscious. Okay, I don't need to do that anymore. I'm not the same person anymore. So, and that's why we rehearse and practice. And then also, what are we going to do from here on the future? So that's why we have the future pacing. So, it kind of sets a future. I'm like seeing it like a manual, like our new manual of how to act in the future from here on in the same situations or different situations. What's your new reaction and actions? How do we respond in the future? Yeah. Yeah, we can change all the memories, but if we don't change our action consciously, and as we change our actions consciously, that becomes unconscious too. The more we do it, the more it goes into the unconscious. So yeah.
So it makes me think when you change a memory, so you've got a memory, you could look at it and think, now that I know this is the truth, how can I start acting differently as a way of practicing your new memory rather than just repeating over and over again this new thing you're seeing, but start looking at it more like, how am I going to act now that I know this is the truth?
Yeah.
Practice the actions and not just the thought.
Yes. Yes. And I heard that from Nicola. It's like the least action pathway, because we can change all the memories, but the least action pathway is just to go into depression, because that's how we have known, that's what we have done. That groove is deep. So conscious, just as soon as you notice it, we can step out of it. And every time we step out of it, we can change that default mode. We can scratch up that groove in the brain too.
Yeah.
Of the pattern.
Why do you call it a least action pathway?
Least action pathway.
What does least action mean?
Like by default, it's our default mode of acting or thinking, behaving.
Okay. And
Yeah.
I guess by default, because your brain likes patterning and it hardwires itself.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Randall froze up a little bit. But like say for example, the least action pathway is to sit with the um not sit facing the wall,
Oh,
right? That's the least action pathway. That's You can change the memory of what happened. Could be past life memory, it could be this life memory, right? Why ever it was important to sit that way, right? But if you don't consciously, because that's the least action pathway, feels comfortable. This is how you want to sit. But if you don't change that up, sometimes sit with against the wall, sometimes opposite the wall. Um, so that action will stay in place. So it's about changing up, interrupting that pattern.
that makes a lot of
So
sense. And it's
I think
uncomfortable.
yeah, I think it's important to do both because, we change the memory, then we also like consciously be aware of what we're doing, what habits we have adopted from it, how it was our default mode of thinking, what's something new we can do, Um, yeah.
It could be as something as simple as waking up in the morning and just laying in bed for several minutes before getting up. You could say, I'm awake. I'm going to get myself to the count of 10, and then my feet are going to be on the ground, you know,
Exactly.
and then do yes, it's going to be a great day to boot.
Gonna be a great day. Yeah, exactly. Or if somebody is in the habit of like, I just gotta rush, rush, rush and get everything done, and just their morning starts with that rush and
Mm,
anxiety, it's like, I'm gonna just take it in. I'm gonna look at the sunrise. I'm gonna take a deep breath. I'm gonna, you know, welcome the new day. It could just changing that pattern. Do
mhm,
something that's different.
mhm.
Because it's the old saying, we get stuck in our ways. It's a
Boy,
it's about just being alive, not being stuck in the way. Life is change.
that's why they say you can't teach an old dog new tricks.
Yeah. Yeah. And healing happens when we have options. When we have options, we can see different ways of doing things differently, right?
And you
Yeah.
hear a saying like you can't teach an old dog new tricks, which is not true, but
No,
it's so commonplace that that becomes a belief system of our society.
it becomes a belief system. Yes, definitely. Yeah. Well, that was really good discussion. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you. We'll see you next week.
Thanks
Same
very
time,
much.
same place. Thank you. You guys have a wonderful week ahead.
You
Thank you.
too.
Bye.